looking for a reason to have to shoot you or to wrestle you to the ground, put their knee on your neck. So don't give it to them, dumbasses. I'm tired of seeing these guys thinking, but there is no buts. You already know that you're a black man in America. Okay, that's all you need to know, really. Stop it. Anyway, we're gonna cut to another break. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
You're listening to a man who's almost intelligent. Very close. Welcome back to Probably Offensive. One hell of a show. Yeah.
All right, we're back. Thank you for hanging on. I know we got a few ads that are been slipped in here. Bear with me. The breaks are really short, though, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal. Anyway, we got more news, and it seems like all the news is protesters and black people being shot, which is not funny. But there used to be more news in the world, I thought. But that's all there is now. In other news, protesters in Louisville, they were still protesting in Louisville, and see, I didn't know everybody was still protesting. I know there's still protests going on in some of the cities out west, Portland and Seattle, big protest cities. But in Louisville, there were protesters that were arrested for walking across, jaywalking or something. I'm serious. This is not a joke. Protesters were actually arrested in Louisville for jaywalking. So I don't know how many protesters they apprehended, the dangerous jaywalkers, but some protesters were arrested for jaywalking. They call it blocking an intersection. I guess the protesters walked across the street, and then the light turned green, and they were still walking across the street. So the cops arrested everybody who was, causing a delay on the traffic to get by in Louisville. Now, they haven't arrested the cops who murdered Breonna Taylor, but they arrested some jaywalkers in Louisville. And so that's justice in America. Cops can kick your door down and then kill you and get away with it so far. But if you jaywalk, you're a dangerous criminal who needs to be apprehended. And it turns out that the cops lied to even get the warrant to kick Breonna Taylor's door down. Turns out that one of the cops told a judge when they were applying for the warrant that the post office had told them that there was a lot of suspicious mail going to this apartment, and when the post office was questioned about it, they said, no, we didn't say that. We never said that about Breonna Taylor's apartment. So turns out the cops even lied so that they could kick Breonna Taylor's door down and kill her. Even though they said that was an accident. They had the wrong apartment. So that's what's going on in Louisville. Cops saying things that are not true and getting away with murder. So far, so good. Rustin Chesky. If you're not familiar with that name, Rustin Chesky, he's the person, I do believe, Rustin Chesky is the person who was killed in Portland. He was a Trump supporter. He confronted some Black Lives Matter protesters and they shot him. But he wasn't the only one who confronted these protesters. There was a lot of Trump supporters, a whole group of them with guns, who confronted Black Lives Matter protesters, who apparently at least one of them had a gun too. And, he shot one of the Trump supporters. I don't think that the person who shot Ruskin Chesky has been apprehended, but what they said, what's been reported is the two groups came together, an argument ensued, and then shots were fired. And so one person ended up dead, and they said that he was with the group of Trump supporters. They were carrying Trump flags and yelling at the Black Lives Matter protesters and how they didn't appreciate them protesting. Well, one thing you got to understand, it's your right to protest. If you're peacefully protesting, then that's your right in this country. For citizens of this country, you can peacefully protest. What you're supposed to be able to do that without being harassed. That didn't happen last night in Portland. Somebody actually was shot and killed, unfortunately. Now, back to this situation in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where after Jacob Blake was shot in the back 7 times by police, the officer who did the shooting was placed on administrative leave. And so the officer is waiting to see what is going to become of him and his employment in Wisconsin. But after after Jacob Blake was shot in the back by the cops, of this officer, just one officer, the protests erupted and the rioting too. I guess you gotta call it rioting if they do some damage to property or burn a building or something, or a car. Sometimes they catch a car on fire. But the rioting erupted after Jacob Blake was shot. And from that rioting, Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old, shows up, and he shot and killed 2 protesters, both of them white. Not that that matters, but for people who thinking there's a race war, because I heard one reporter say there's a race war. No, it's not a race war. A lot of the Black Lives Matter protesters are white, so that's not a race war. But anyway, one of the people killed by Kyle Rittenhouse was Anthony Huber, and the other guy's name was Joseph Rosenbaum. All 3 of these people were Caucasian gentlemen. But like I said, that doesn't matter, except to point out that it wasn't racial. It was just that this idiot young jackass Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old kid, first of all, illegally carrying a gun, because he's 17. He's not allowed, shouldn't be carrying a gun, period. But obviously he was. And he drove up from Illinois to pick a fight with a protester, because this is what kind of idiot asshole this Kyle Rittenhouse is, who subsequently has a lot of support. People have started a GoFundMe page that I don't know what it is, because I really wouldn't want to promote it if I did know, because I think the kid deserves to stay in jail. He just murdered two people who had nothing to do with you. They were just protesters that you didn't appreciate the protests, and so you picked a fight with somebody and killed them. You don't bring an AR-15, especially when you're a 17-year-old. The cops just let him walk around with it. They didn't ask him any questions at all. And if that had been a black man walking around the streets of Kenosha, Wisconsin, with an AR-15, he would have been not just shot to death, but questioned so that they could shoot him to death. They may have just shot him without asking any questions and acted like, oh, we seen this guy with a gun and we were in fear for our lives. What made you so in fear? Well, he was black. But this white kid's able to just walk around with an AR-15 and they don't ask him any questions. Even if they think he's 18, they don't know that. The kid looks like a kid. He didn't even look like an older guy. So why wouldn't you at least ask him how old he is? To check and make sure that, the cops were out there, because there was protesting going on, and the police have to be out there. But I guess if you're a 17-year-old white guy, you're allowed to carry an AR-15. And you can murder people if they're on the, protesting for Black Lives Matter. You're allowed to murder them, I guess. So even if they're white guys, you can murder them. But the cops just let this kid walk around with an AR-15, the gun of choice for wackos and nut jobs, I guess. So many times we find these guys carrying these AR-15s are the ones who usually do the mass shootings. And this is not a mass shooting, but he murdered two people. So not mass, but obviously he had wounded someone else too. Just two people died. He actually shot another guy too, but he didn't die. So he actually shot three people. This Kyle, the jackass Rittenhouse. The other guy didn't die. These two guys died. This Joseph Rosenbaum and the Anthony Huber. Now, I think the Rustin Chesky is either the name of the cop that shot Jacob Blake, or he's the person who was shot in Portland. My notes are, the research I do before I do this podcast. Sometimes I forget why did I have this written down, and what did this mean? So my notes are,